Bonjour et bienvenue à la séance L'innovation de rupture, la série d'apprentissage virtuel du réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's segment from the Federal Youth Network, the Virtual Learning Series Story. And it's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Robert Armstrong. I am the Regional Manager of HR Programs at Public Services and Procurement Canada in Halifax. Bonjour, je m'appelle Robert Armstrong. Je suis gestionnaire régional des programmes en ressources humaines, à travaux publics et à services publics et approvisionnement Canada. On vient toujours de changer son nom, le ministère où je travaille, et je me retrouve à Halifax. I would like to begin, of course, by acknowledging that I am joining you from inside the historic Dominion Public Building on the Halifax waterfront. I'm actually at work on the, this is also known as Chibuktuk, on the traditional unceded territory of Mi'kmaq. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to work, live, and play here, especially over the last year. Je vous invite tous à prendre connaissance du territoire autochtone traditionnel où vous vous trouvez n'importe où au Canada. Before we begin and get into a little bit more housekeeping, I'm going to ask Josh to queue up a welcome message from the Deputy Minister Champion, Christiane Fox. Thanks, Josh.
Hi, I'm Chris Fox, and I'm the Deputy Minister of Indigenous Services Canada and the Deputy Minister Champion for the Federal Youth Network. It's my pleasure to introduce today's FYN Virtual Learning Series event on disruptive innovation, the FYN VLS story. Il y a un peu plus d'un an, le monde a beaucoup changé pour s'adapter à la pandémie et le gouvernement du Canada a aussi complètement changé ses pratiques et la façon dont nous travaillons pour y répondre. Pour beaucoup d'entre nous, cela signifiait travailler à la maison et être déconnecté des collègues, des amis, des superviseurs et de l'environnement de travail. Nos maisons sont devenues nos lieux de travail et pour beaucoup d'entre nous, nos partenaires et nos enfants sont devenus des collègues dans ce nouvel espace de travail. When the pandemic hit, the Federal Youth Network was about a month away from starting Career Boot Camp with 15 in-person events across Canada. They had employees on micro-missions to support boot camp, and they were finalizing venue contracts and travel plans. This all changed on March 13th, 2020, with departments sending employees home and with uncertainty on if or when in-person learnings could resume. As a resilient, agile, and innovative community, the Federal Youth Network saw this as a challenge and an opportunity to quickly adapt and change their format. They launched their first segment for the Virtual Learning Series on March 23rd, 2020, so just days after the World Health Organization declared this a pandemic, and only 1 week into the pandemic and work from home realities. They used Zoom webinar to launch the series and social media to share the message, all while encouraging employees to be off their VPNs and really reduce the Government of Canada's network usage. I have been thrilled to see where the FYN VLS has gone over the last year, with more than 85 webcasts covering topics including networking, social media, career development, virtual tools, mental health, and diversity and inclusion. They've built partnerships with Indigenous Services Canada, the Federal Black Employee Caucus, the Public Service Renewal Secretariat, Public Service Pride, and so many more organizations. And I've had a chance to take part in these events, and they have been fantastic. Ils ont montré que les organisations de base peuvent vraiment s'adapter presque instantanément à une nouvelle réalité et lancer des programmes avec une mentalité de produit minimal viable. Je suis très fière d'être la sous-ministre championne pour cette communauté, de vous faire entendre leur histoire d'innovation, de rupture. Et je pense que vous allez beaucoup apprendre aujourd'hui. Thank you. Merci.
And thank you to Deputy Minister Fox for being the champion that every organization deserves. It's exactly that kind of leadership that that's needed across the public service of Canada. Au fur et à mesure que nous progressons dans la session d'aujourd'hui, j'aimerais que vous partagiez vos questions en utilisant le bouton questions et réponses, Q&A, dans la langue de votre choix. On peut toujours voter pour les questions qui semblent très intéressantes en utilisant le bouton thumbs up. Donc, c'est la petite pouce pour voter les questions. As we move through today's session, we're going to run through a bunch of questions. We're going to have a good conversation. But after that, I would really like for everybody to be interacting with us and adding your comments in the chat space by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice, of course. You can vote for questions you like that seem super interesting that you want us to address just by voting on the thumbs up button. It's as simple as that. N'oubliez pas que cette séance est bilingue. N'hésitez pas à commenter et à poser vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Et aujourd'hui, nous accueillons 3 panélistes. So we have an amazing team here who have all been working super hard. As Christiane Fox mentioned, it's pretty impressive. A lot has happened in the last year. Les personnes qui sont avec nous vont toutes partager leur expertise et on va les rencontrer tout de suite. So they're going to do their own introductions, and most of you know them, of course, if you've been attending our sessions over the year, as I have. So let's begin with Jennifer McDougall. Jen, take it away. You're on mute, my friend. Yep, that's the phrase from 2020. Sorry.
That's good because I didn't like the way I started, so I get to start again. Thanks, Robert. Je m'appelle Jennifer McDougall, puis je suis le gestionnaire des partenariats et les événements pour le réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux. So I am the Senior Manager of Partnerships and Events for the Federal Youth Network. What that meant over a year ago and what that means now is similar, but a little bit different now that we've moved everything online. But partnerships and events have been my focus before and now and moving into the future.
Right on. Thanks, Jen. Now we're going to hear from Marcella Popowich, and she's going to introduce herself and tell us what she's all about. She's actually the brains behind the scenes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marcella Popowich. I'm the virtual event manager of the Federal Youth Network. And I was on that micro mission that Christiane Fox mentioned, doing something completely different, signed up for something completely different. And then I ended up title change and my job changed. And that's what we're going to discuss today and how we moved into that. I was on that micro mission. I took a leap of faith from my substantive job with the CRA. I'm doing something completely new. I've learned so many skills and I'm so appreciative of being on this team. So that's a little bit about me, just a tiny bit.
Excellent. Thanks, Marcella. We're going to get to know you even more throughout the next hour, I'm sure. And as Jen mentioned in the chat, les playlists, toute la musique que vous entendez depuis des mois avant les séances, c'est grâce à Marcella qu'on a toujours de la bonne musique avant les séances. So Josh is going to introduce himself, and then I think he's going to share a little bit of a video retrospective of some sort so that we can set the stage. Go ahead, Josh.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Joshua Frame, National Chair of the Federal Youth Network, and I guess over the last year, the moderator for, I don't know, like 70 of the 85 webcasts or something that we posted up for the virtual learning series. So really happy to be with you here today and to share our story. I think when we were looking at this, we felt it was important on the 1-year anniversary of the series to really share, what went right, what went wrong, and where you can take some lessons learned from our experience and apply them to your own situations. Alors, je suis très fier d'être ici aujourd'hui et puis on va partager des informations et puis un peu d'informations sur cette vidéo. So I'll now share the video that Marcella has prepared with some of the key information about the series. One moment.
amazing. Et merci, Marcella, pour le survol assez intéressant sur l'année qu'on vient de terminer. It's been quite a year, honestly, on 1,001 different fronts. And the innovation's not over. I really liked and appreciated actually the title of today's session. It's about disrupting innovation. Et en français, on parle du fait que c'est la rupture. Donc, on va rompre les stéréotypes de la fonction publique qui n'est pas prête à changer, à transformer, à s'adapter. So really, we're talking about disrupting stereotypes and mythologies around the fact that we can't pivot, we can't change, we can't transform and adapt when we have to, because in fact we can. Not all of us can do it as fast as others, but it's all very possible. So that's really the theme of today. C'est vraiment un thème de changement, de transformation et d'adaptabilité au sein de la fonction publique. So let's start at the beginning. We have a few questions that we're going to cover with the panelists, and I'll pick and choose every once in a while, and sometimes it'll be a free-for-all. On va parler du début pour commencer. So, comment est-ce que vous avez eu l'idée pour la série d'apprentissage virtuel? This is the simple question to start with, is how did this idea come up? We were all, frankly, focused on bigger picture things, yet you somehow put your heads together and said, hey, let's do this. Is that what happened? Who wants to start with this? Let's start with you, Jen.
Sure, absolutely. So Josh and I actually were in Toronto delivering in-person learning for Future Leaders of Ontario. We were up there that week. And actually I was in a panic because I was starting to worry if I was going to get home or if I would become a resident of Toronto. So the last evening of our last session, Josh and I were sitting down having dinner and kind of talking about like, what does the future hold? And instead of getting sad and panicked about, oh, we're going to have to cancel Career Boot Camp and oh, like all of our plans are ruined, we were like, well, like what could we do and what should we do? So I was fortunate enough that I have a background in learning, but also I have a certification in online product design, and I had done some online learning. I was tutored by the amazing Isa David and Jennifer Bunham, so I knew the ins and outs of virtual learning in virtual classrooms. So I proposed to Josh that maybe we could give that a go, and that I could teach what I knew, and we could take the things that we know our audience is still going to have a thirst for in the pandemic and be able to deliver it to them at the same time. So we want to make sure that public servants who were counting on learning were still going to be able to get learning, that we were still following our mandate and offering something, but also we started to be concerned about people who were just being onboarded and how were they going to be connected and stay connected. So I'm sure Josh can elaborate and tell his version of that same story, but there's always three versions to a story, right? So let's see what Josh remembers the story as.
No, I think I remember it fairly similarly. Like it was an interesting week because we were in Toronto delivering learning, and even at those sessions we were talking about the future of work, and we knew basically that, you know, that was the Thursday. We knew the Friday was going to be likely public servants being sent home for an indefinite period of time, which I think at the time we were talking about as either 3 weeks or possibly up to a few months. And so here we are, you know, 12 and a half months later, and it's still our reality. But Jen and I had a fair bit of experience of, you know, working from home or working from wherever. You know, we were used to delivering learning and events across Canada. And our home office was basically wherever our laptop and our phone was. Nothing else really mattered, but we knew that that wasn't the reality for most public servants. Alors, on connaissait que le changement de travailler à la maison, ça serait un changement énorme pour la plupart des fonctionnaires. So my first experience working from home was back in 2014. I switched from leading a team of about 12 to 14 people, and all of a sudden I was working from home by myself with no one who was anywhere near me physically. So colleagues I had were in Ottawa and in Summerside, PEI. And I knew that for me, that was a big shift. And I knew about the tools and I knew how to connect, and I still felt immediately disconnected. But we knew that for the 283,000 people, maybe 10 or 15,000 of them had, you know, significant experience working remotely or working from home. And 250,000, 270,000 people were going to be like, how do I do this? What do I do now? Like, so I think that was part of the focus was, you know, getting out early and saying, you know, hey, we can launch this. Like, it took us, basically a day to come up with, how are we going to find a platform? How are we going to start building this? And it was funny because I think that first conversation, we also were musing about, okay, well, we just took on, 10 people on micro mission to organize an in-person conference across Canada. Should we send them an email saying your micro mission's canceled and you're all going back to your home departments as of Monday? So that was the other part of our thinking was like, well, can we use the resources that we have? Like we have these people on board. Can we use them? Can we change what they do? And that's worked out to our benefit.
Marcella did allude to that when we talked about what her position was, because what we've asked her to do in the last year was not what we hired her to do, and what was in the poster when we were looking for a micro mission. So we learned a lot in that process as well.
Donc, vous, là, vous vous basez surtout sur vos expériences et sur votre expertise. Donc, vous deux, vous avez déjà travaillé de même depuis assez longtemps. But I'd like to just go to Marcella if we can, because she is, often we discussed this. She's the example of somebody who had to pivot hard real quick. What was your reaction, Marcella, when all of a sudden these guys came to you and said, so say what we had planned for you is not what we're going to do anymore? How do you feel about that?
Well, that's an interesting question, Rob. At first, I have to say, because Josh is like, oh, we're using Zoom. And I swear, I think I had like 5 days to figure out how to use Zoom. And honestly, it wasn't something that was being used like a lot. Like it was something that there was not a lot of exposure. So I had to take it upon myself to kind of find tutorials. I found these people who were doing tutorials out of Alberta Health Services. I started following them because they were doing some quick Zoom tutorials for their public servants. So it was really interesting. But I think all of us in the team, not just myself, like all of us had to really pivot and really like, okay, who can do comms? Who can do, work on organizing ourselves? And who can, we had to learn how to use like different registration systems. It was kind of insane, but on the flip side, like it was crazy good in a way, because for myself, I needed that kind of away from the craziness of COVID, right? I have 2 small children. At the time, they were 9 and 11. So I had to really like be there for them mentally, but this gave me something to also focus on, right? Like, and for myself, that's how I work best, is under pressure. And I also work best learning new things. So I think that that's something that really spoke to me about FYN, and something that really Jen and Josh, honestly, they gave us a tremendous amount of trust, because they had to believe that I could learn Zoom, and they had to believe that Kristen could, do the registration system and all of that. So it was in some ways it was good. In some ways it was like hectic. It was super hectic for all of us. But I think that Josh and Jen really sold it to us well, and I'll always remember them saying, we need to give something to the public service. Like we need to give them a sense of normalcy. And that's how they sold it to the team. Like we don't want to just sit here and be in shock. We want to be able to help people move beyond that. And I think that's what sold us on help and on their vision.
So many learning moments right there. Il y a tant de moments d'apprentissage, des petits brins de sagesse même. Donc là, on vient de mentionner le fait qu'il fallait changer de direction, il fallait changer et s'adapter. Et c'était quand même assez chaotique au début, mais en trouvant un focus, on était plus capable de s'adapter, c'est évident. Mais aussi, Marcella a mentionné quelque chose de très important, c'est dans les moments où on n'est pas capable de trouver les bonnes réponses au sein de notre communauté, disons, fédérale. Il y a tant d'autres de fonctions publiques au Canada et même dans le monde là, où on peut chercher, et même au secteur privé, mais juste au sein de la fonction publique et en faisant partie d'une grande famille au Canada, Marcella a mentionné la fonction publique de l'Alberta, mais il y a toutes les autres provinces, tous les autres territoires et même des grandes villes avec des fonctions publiques assez importantes où on peut trouver les cousins qui peuvent nous aider, right? C'est souvent les cousins perdus. So often it's in finding those lost cousins in the other public services where we can find that inspiration and that help. You're talking a little bit about mindsets. I want to get to that in a minute, but let's go back to the goal, right? Because I think Marcella just kind of led us there in her discussion of Josh and Jen selling the micro missioners on, well, this is what we're doing now, and this is why it's a good thing. So I want to go back to you, Jen. Seriously, what was the goal when you guys sat down and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to offer to the public service. What was your primary objective? What were you actually aiming for?
Okay, I haven't rehearsed this answer because I don't know. I didn't know the question. So I think the goal for me was, like Marcella said, to have a sense of normalcy. So a place that people could go if they wanted to keep learning, if they wanted to connect. Josh mentioned when he first started working virtually, like that he needed to find a way to connect. What I found was the most shocking thing about, well, I guess it's not shocking, but I was surprised that when we all started working virtually, everyone's supposed to stay off the network. Well, how are we supposed to stay connected if everyone is disconnected, literally? And so we needed to really think about, okay, what tools can we use that aren't on the network? How can we reach people that's not network dependent? So even like emailing people wasn't going to work, because if people weren't using their email, then they wouldn't know. So we really pivoted to social media. We really relied heavily on the GC tools. So shout out to GC tools. We started working in the open using GC Wiki. So everything that we've ever done is available on GC Wiki. It's still all there. We make it prettier and iterate whenever we can, but like that's how we started working. To me, it was really important, and anyone who knows me well knows, like, my passion is making sure that new public servants can find their way. And to me, all I thought was, oh my goodness, if you're a new public servant right now, must feel so overwhelming. So it's one thing if you're going to meetings and you don't understand what they're talking about and you don't know the acronyms and you feel weird. But imagine if you're not even getting to go to the meetings, you're just sitting at home, not knowing what's going on and not allowed to use your email and not allowed on the intranet and not allowed to do any learning, and no one is having coffee with you. You don't know what you're doing. So we really just wanted a place for public servants where they could get together, maintain some normalcy, try to continue some business as usual. For people who didn't have work to do, now that part is hard for me to even remember, but at the beginning, some people didn't have anything to actually work on. So what a great opportunity to work on your resume, to grow your network, to fine tune your social media. Like, it was a gold mine of things that we could teach public servants that would actually help their work once they got back to doing their day job, but things they could kind of do on the corner of their desk in the meantime. So for me, it was really based on what my why as a public servant is, as much as that aligns to what the mandate of the Federal Youth Network is.
So aligning the why, aligning the mandate, on va parler aussi du fait que vous avez utilisé les médias sociaux, vous êtes vraiment comme, vous êtes parti de loin de nos réseaux internes, parce que les réseaux n'étaient même pas disponibles dans la plupart des cas, donc c'était vraiment comme une nécessité. Mais Josh, comme j'aimerais parler un peu de qu'est-ce que vous aviez, vous autres, là, qui vous a rendu comme capable de faire ça? Like, what was in place that made you able to do that? Do you know what I mean? Parce que là moi aussi, je n'avais pas mon réseau, mais moi, je n'ai pas créé comme une série d'apprentissages virtuels.
So I think it starts with a lack of fear, if I'm honest. Alors, je pense qu'on n'a pas peur de faillir. On n'a pas peur de avoir un produit qui ne fonctionne pas. On n'a pas de peur parce qu'on sait que c'est peut-être la première étape à changer ce produit pour qu'il y ait de valeur, pour qu'il y ait des personnes qui sont intéressées. So I think that's the first thing is, we started off not knowing if our first session would have 30 people or only our team on it. But that lack of fear and knowing that, we would basically be the first out of the gate. That was part of our push, was like, let's not spend 6 weeks trying to iterate this. Public servants, by the time we launched our virtual learning series, public servants had already had a week of being at home, being disconnected, we were already hearing from them of what they were needing. And that was engagement, that was programming. And so when we launched, only a week after the start of the pandemic, we knew that there was some level of disconnection happening, as we thought there would be. And we knew that, we could adapt the product as we went along. I think when our first week, if I recall, we had like 4 sessions, and I think we did 4 sessions a week for a while. And then we were like, okay, well, maybe there isn't a market for 4 sessions a week. That might be too many. And I mean, we had some sessions where, we had 2 people show up. And we were like, okay, well, maybe this isn't a topic of interest, or, even around like official languages and trying to, have programming in both languages. On a discuté d'avoir les séances en français et puis en anglais, ou les séances bilingues. On a changé le format pendant l'année pour accommoder les 2 langues, parce qu'on a vu que c'est meilleur d'avoir tous les apprenants dans une séance au lieu d'avoir les séances en français avec 2 personnes et les séances en anglais avec 60 ou 100 ou 150 personnes. So we changed our approach to OL as we went along as well. So we started off saying, let's have sessions in English and French. And we had some sessions where we had 60 people show up for, social media in English, and we had a person and the facilitators show up for social media in French. And it started getting us to think of rethink how we did our approach to official languages, how we do selection of panelists to have a combination of bilingual speakers. And if we don't, how we have an approach to deal with that. So all of that kind of changed over time, but it was really that, sort of fearlessness. I don't generally feel like our organization, unless we end up in the news or something, there's nothing that I'm not willing to try. And Jen is the same way. We've done this on other projects beforehand and taken an approach of all right, well, if it fails, and we'll learn from that. But if it works, then it works, and we'll learn from that too. So I think that really helped us.
Merci, Josh. C'est excellent. Paul, vous avez tous parlé d'un état d'esprit qui était nécessaire pour avoir la réussite dans ce que vous avez fait. Jen avait parlé du fait qu'elle comprenait de façon très, très profonde son pourquoi professionnel. Right? So, avec cet état d'esprit, elle sait exactement ce qu'elle veut faire pour contribuer à la fonction publique. Josh a parlé du fait que lui, il a créé, puis il soutient une très petite organisation qui n'a pas peur d'échouer, qui n'a pas peur de trébucher des fois. Mais quand on parle du système assez numérique, là, avec des itérations, on apprend, on améliore. Et au fur et à mesure, là, ça devient quelque chose de très viable. Marcella aussi avait parlé au début du fait qu'elle, là, elle cherchait un peu un focus, un besoin de créer quelque chose et de faire quelque chose au sein du chaos, right? She needed to find through the crazy something that would actually build her up. So lots of different mindsets here that we can learn from, right? Taking that focus, getting rid of the fear, and knowing your why. So Marcella, go ahead. Is there another mindset thing that we need to make this work?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add this because, we've had a couple of speakers on the VLS talk about the digital mindset. And I don't even know that we realized that we were living that kind of mindset, and we were just doing it naturally. But one of the things that we did really well was Jen and Josh are very connected. And some of those connections, I feel also wanted to help, also wanted to provide. So, we were able to collaborate really widely with a ton of networks, with a community of practices, with just different people across the public service in order to provide, and like they are saying, get better, provide better programming, find people that are of interest to our audience. And so we've been getting better at that. We've been kind of, and developing partnerships with new people, like developing partnerships with the ARAN, the Anti-Racism Ambassador Network, in terms of finding a diverse kind of panel, right? Always, and finding and making sure that our panels are gendered balanced. And so we've been doing, and we did that from the start. And that's, I don't know, but I don't know, like, I know we have attendees here today and we only had 6 people. Like to think of all the things that we've been able to do. And when I think of the organizations that I've been a part of before, the bureaucracy sometimes that exists in order to get things done. And maybe I'm not supposed to say that, sorry, Josh, but it's the truth, right? And so that's another thing, right? We were able to just take into consideration all the things that we needed to consider, the language considerations, the gender balance. You know, we've tried from the very beginning to have diverse panels, all of that. And we were able to do that fearlessly, as Josh says, because we had partners, we had networks, people that we could tap into that were also willing to help us. And I really think that we were able to tap into the issues of the day in our partnership with FlexGC, in our partnership with the Federal Black Employee Caucus. So there's so many different partnerships that I think have spoken to our audience as well. And that's helped us reiterate and get better and make a better product.
So, Marcella parle du fait qu'on a fait du progrès, mais on a commencé assez doucement avec un nombre assez peu important de gens qui étaient là, mais au fur et à mesure, là, il y avait toujours plus de monde et on s'améliorait. And we just talked about some of those factors that I think contributed to the success. So, Marcella a parlé du fait qu'il y avait déjà des partenariats établis, que Jen et Josh avaient déjà des réseaux au sein de la fonction publique et même à l'extérieur de la fonction publique. So I want to go around the table if we can, and you know, you talked a little bit about the tech, right? Il n'y avait pas de technologie à l'interne de disponible, donc Zoom, right? Et Marcella a appris comment faire. Il y avait de l'expérience, il y avait des réseaux déjà établis, il y avait comme une équipe déjà en place, mais pour d'autres choses d'abord, right? So il fallait comme inventer la roue un peu. Talk about the way that you guys are organized, though. Like, what else worked in your favor? Because it's, I mean, Marcella, that is a fair point, right? Il y a toujours de la bureaucratie, mais c'est un bon leader filtre un peu, right? Good leaders in the public service kind of buffer us against the bureaucracies or run interference for us. Qu'est-ce qui était déjà en place ou qu'est-ce que vous avez fait pour s'assurer de la réussite? So Jen, go ahead, take this one.
Well, Marcella put it in chat before I got to it, and I think it has to do with trust. Marcella mentioned it earlier. I know the rest of our team, or the rest of our team who is still with us, and there are members of our team who left after a piece of their migration. I hope that they experienced being empowered. And so when we had a vision or an idea, we're like, okay, this is what we want. This is what we're doing. We would have sometimes we wouldn't even have a meeting. Sometimes we would just like send it in a chat of some kind on some platform. And then we're like, okay, just make something like that happen. So we had tried Google Forms for registration. We've tried like the Zoom for registration. It's currently not capturing everything we'd like to capture, but we don't have a system like the school has where we can capture your entire profile. We also don't want to own all of that data. So then we have to also be good data stewards, and how much is a privacy risk. And so there are just so many rolling components that Josh and I couldn't possibly consider everything. So we kind of engaged our team on the pieces that they were passionate about learning, and we've checked in with them regularly, like, what do you want to do on this team? And if there's nothing that you want to do, you also are free to go. Like, you don't have to stay and ride this wave with us because this is going to be a rough ride. So that was one of the options. But find the piece that you're interested in, teach yourself, come back to us if you hit a question where you're like, this seems like something I shouldn't do, or this seems like it's not possible. But otherwise, we would just test it, and then we'd be like, oh, that worked, but not good enough. Let's iterate. Or that didn't work at all. Let's scrap it and try something else. But I think it had to do with trust, that we trusted that everybody had the best intentions and that their heart was in the same place, that they saw the same vision, and we were all working towards the same goal. And that we gave them the power to make some of those decisions and run with them.
Donc, Jen parle beaucoup du fait que les membres de l'équipe avaient une confiance les uns dans les autres et aussi du fait qu'il y avait quand même une certaine autonomie, right, quant à la prise de décision. Et je trouve que c'est important, merci Jen de l'avoir mentionné, si on n'était pas à l'aise avec ce qui se passait, puis à l'aise de travailler de même, on était quand même libre de se lever la main puis de dire non, je ne peux pas, je ne suis pas capable présentement, mais bonne chance, right? So, ça, c'est quand même une ouverture qui reconnaît la réalité différente des gens à cette étape-là, right? Puis on peut toujours revenir dans l'équipe. I just want to remind everybody that the Q&A is open. There's a few questions in there, but keep throwing your questions in there because I'm going to go over to those in a minute. So, n'oubliez pas de mettre vos questions dans la section Q&A et je vais aller vers les questions dans quelques minutes.
So, Robert, I just want to add to what I just said because I think that is part of why we've been successful. Like, we all want to be here. None of us are here because we can't get other jobs. None of us are here because we don't have skill sets to move elsewhere. Most of us, this isn't, I guess none of us, this is our substantive job because there are no substantive jobs at the Federal Youth Network. Right. And so it's about we have a vision and we share the vision. And even if we don't always agree on things that are getting us to that vision, we all have the same vision and we trust that we're all heading the same way. So for example, today someone sent something and do you like version A or version B? And we all kind of voted and like, we'll just go, maybe we'll go with like version W by the end, but who knows, we'll just iterate as we go. But we all have the same goal. And I think that that's what makes our team able to struggle through all the changes and the iterations because the goal is visible to everyone. And sometimes I think in the government, when you're working away as the little cog on the wheel, you have no idea what the goal of the machine is. And in our case, we all know what the goal is.
Donc, on parle d'une vision partagée puis des objectifs qui sont familiers puis qui sont partagés quand même au sein de l'équipe. Josh, c'est toi qui es ultimement responsable du réseau, si j'ose le dire. Y a-t-il quelque chose au niveau de la hiérarchie puis de la façon dont tu gères la chose qui semble avoir contribué à la réussite de la série?
Alors, je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'éléments, mais je pense que c'est, comme Jen a dit, qu'on travaille ensemble et puis on ne travaille pas d'une façon qu'on doit tous avoir la même opinion de quelque chose, mais on peut changer notre approche. Alors, je ne paye pas le salaire de Marcella. Je n'ai aucune, de façon, je suis le gestionnaire de Marcella. Mais si Marcella veut quitter le réseau, elle peut le faire comme demain. Alors, on doit avoir le respect, on doit avoir l'interaction et avoir une approche que c'est une équipe et vous avez tous des idées et toutes ces idées peuvent contribuer à un produit qui est supérieur à un produit qui est fait par seulement une personne.
Merci. I'm seeing questions coming into the box and some of them are good ones. So I'm super excited about that. So we are going to get there in a second. But this is a question that's in the box, and it's one that really I was planning to ask anyway. So let's hit it. You've done, 80-some sessions, I think it was. You've seen 6,000 people. We're not even talking about Career Bootcamp. That's a whole separate story. But this series, right, is phenomenal. But still, you got to have some regrets, right? There must be something that you wish you'd done differently, or maybe something that you wish nobody had seen. So, right, Marcella, let's go to you. What's the one thing that you're really not proud of this year? Like, let's be super honest. One thing that you're not proud of.
Honestly, Robert, I don't think there's anything. I was the wrong person to ask this question because I came into this micro mission.
Oh, I thought you would have said Pride Week.
Okay, well, that Zoom bombing. Yeah, that's terrible. That was terrible. That was a terrible, that's something that happened that, you know, maybe my naivete, I didn't realize that there was people out there that do that kind of thing. So what Jen is referring to, audience, is that during our Public Service Pride Week, I had organized a Zoom meeting. and we had shared it widely on Twitter. And unfortunately, we got Zoom bombed with a lot of hate, both against the community and against Black people. It was very random hate. It was all over the place. That's probably one of my biggest regrets in trusting, you know, that people wouldn't do that kind of thing. Now I know better now, and in safeguarding the people that participated in that as well. I took it really hard. That's probably, you're right, Jen. That's probably my biggest regret, is having opened that up to everybody. But otherwise, Robert, I honestly don't have a lot of regrets. I was in the CRA. I love my job. I love managing people. Nothing against the organization, but it was a completely different job, completely different than what I did. I did this because I was like, oh, you know, maybe I've been 15, 20 years maybe at the CRA. I need a bit of something different. And this was it for me. And like, no, I think I've been on one team government. I think I've been on everyone I've told. No regrets joining the FYN team.
So, Marcel résume en quelque peu son approche à sa vie. Right? Il n'y a aucun regret. Même s'il y a des choses qui se sont produites qui étaient comme très loin d'être plaisantes, comme l'attaque Zoom pendant la semaine de la fierté, il n'y a pas de regret. C'est quand même un apprentissage qui a été fait. On sait maintenant comment bloquer ces choses-là puis comment les éviter. So thanks, Marcella, for being so wise. Josh, I'll rephrase it a little bit, take it from a different angle. If you were going to be sitting down selling this idea to somebody who's going to be funding you, and you know, il y avait du financement, puis même, I don't know, des FTE, right? Une équipe pleine. How would you frame it differently? What would you ask for la prochaine fois?
So how would I frame it differently? I think I would frame it as that, you know, a project like this is a project that you can do in the context of a grassroots network like the Federal Youth Network. It's not something that you can add layers and layers of authority to and have it be successful. And I think we even, you know, Jen alluded to, you know, some challenges sometimes in terms of, you know, different levels of bureaucracy that we had to deal with. But in the context of, you know, a team that would be, you know, sort of delivering something to a department or something where you don't have that trust from your senior management, it would be impossible to do the same project. I know I've worked in departments where, you know, we had projects that would roll out over an 18-month time frame. This rolled out in, I guess, 6 business days. You know, that's not something that you can do in an organization that's funded for hundreds of millions of dollars, where everything needs to be approved by a deputy minister. But I think the lesson from the pandemic and the lesson from the VLS is that there is a lot that can be done in a short time frame. So, you know, SERB was rolled out in a short time frame. All of these programs were rolled out in a very short time frame because people were on board, similar to what Jen mentioned for the VLS and for FYN. People were on board with that project and with those priorities. So I think that's part of the priority is really, you know, if people believe in what you're doing, you can do great things. And if people don't, and you're the, like, sort of shouting from the corner to try to get people on board, that's not really going to work. So I think we kind of took the approach of, like, you know, we'll get people on board as time goes on, but we'll make sure that we have a little bit of an audience to start with. So I think that that definitely helped us, but it's not something that, you know, you could have an organization of learning that's staffed with, you know, 600 or 800 people and be able to do the same thing in the same timelines. So I think that's a huge lesson.
So, c'est comme Josh dit, là, il y a une certaine souplesse, puis il y a des possibilités qui sont disponibles quand on est très petit, puis quand on n'a pas une grande hiérarchie et quand on est un peu loin du centre de la prise de décision. Mais ce que je veux souligner, c'est aussi la tolérance des échecs, l'adaptabilité aux réussites qui étaient juste comme à moitié faites, et même la capacité de réapprendre au fur et à mesure, right? So that's really an important, I think, message that you're giving here is if you're if you're looking for perfection in the beginning, I think Serb was a really good analogy, Josh, right? We all know that Serb was rolled out amazingly quick. Comme vraiment, là, félicitations à nos collègues au ministère là, qui étaient responsables de tous ces paiements qui ont été sortis pour aider les Canadiens. Mais c'était pas parfait. You can't be perfect in a time like that. You got to go back and fix it, though. You can't just run away from it. Et c'est ça un peu comme la leçon. I want to go to one of the questions. Of course, we're going to talk about the future at the end. So I see those questions there. Don't be worried, everybody. I'll get there. Mais il y avait la question des langues officielles. Donc, Georges a déjà mentionné le fait qu'on avait essayé des séances en français puis des séances en anglais. On avait essayé un peu la formule, chacun sa propre séance. Mais on a décidé, en fin de compte, pour quelques différentes raisons, que les séances bilingues était un peu comme, mais plus facile à gérer. Et peut-être que les résultats étaient aussi meilleurs. So Jen, let's go to the official languages question, because I mean, we're trying to be bilingual as best we can. Everybody can contribute in the language of their choice. We can answer the questions dans la langue du choix de tous. Mais comment est-ce qu'on va équilibrer les choses, right? Toi, tu te trouves à Moncton, right? C'est comme quand même the home of bilingualism in my region and in yours. How did you figure this out as you were going forward this year?
Comme tu sais, Robert, j'avais déjà la chance que je travaillais dans un environnement bilingue. Je suis à Moncton, je suis anglophone, mais je suis à Moncton, puis tout le monde parlait deux langues d'habitude. Puis dans le travail que je faisais avant, je savais que c'était important que les événements soient offerts en anglais et en français ou avec une interprétation simultanée. Ce que vous ne savez pas, c'est que l'interprétation simultanée, c'est pas mal cher. Je pense que nous autres, on avait fait la recherche, puis c'était environ 3 000 par heure. C'était pas possible avec nous autres de faire ça. On aurait bien aimé. So, si tu veux nous donner de l'argent, on aimerait faire ça dans l'avenir. So when we go to the question about the future, if anybody wants to sponsor us with simultaneous interpretation, we will happily take your money. But short of being able to do that, we had to find ways to overcome, I wouldn't necessarily call it an obstacle, but it was a design feature that we weren't really sure how to manage. And we did try a lot of different things. So like Josh mentioned, we tried English sessions and French sessions, but from a learning standpoint, it wasn't the same because you don't get the same questions if there's not the same number of learners. So if there's only one learner, there's no interaction, there's no networking. So there's a lot of the learning aspect that gets lost if the numbers aren't comparable. Finding speakers also was challenging. So Marcella's responsibility is currently like reaching out to speakers and finding speakers. While Josh and I both can moderate in both official languages, it's tricky if the speakers can't speak both official languages. So that was another way we had to try to figure out how we would deal with that. So based on my experience working in OL, and I mean, I actually used to work for Robert Armstrong, who has won awards for his official language abilities. Catherine LeBlanc, who's on the call today, used to work at Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages, and we used to work together and figure out ways to deliver events in a bilingual capacity. So active offer has always been available. You're always welcome to ask questions in the language of your choice. We provide resources after the session. So those are always provided in both official languages. Our recordings, you can go back and view them. And I think you can get the closed captioning in a different language is my understanding. So we've put as much in place as we can, given the constraints that we have. And I feel like we've really gone much farther than a lot of people have tried to go, although we haven't necessarily reached the mark that we would like to get to. And actually, to be 1,000% honest, and maybe I'm oversharing in this case, I was really happy one day that Christiane Fox was one of our panelists and someone asked why there was no SI. And I felt like saying, like, ask the champion for some cash then, because the only way we can get SI is with money. So while there are going to be tools that are coming along, and we are staying on top of the research, most of those tools spit out a lot of weird garbage that isn't necessarily what you're hoping for. So we wouldn't want to put that on our learners either. So we do our best. Official language is something we're very conscious of. We do make sure that there is a bilingual aspect. It isn't necessarily perfect, but we are always working towards perfection in that area.
Et c'est bien résumé. Merci, James, que c'est toujours quelque chose. SI, comme je vois dans le clavardage, SI, simultaneous interpretation. Donc, c'est l'interprétation simultanée qui coûte très cher. Donc là, comme on dit, on fait de notre mieux, puis on s'améliore. Mais ce qui s'apprend, et moi je parle pour moi-même, ça prend quand même un président d'une réunion, quelqu'un qui peut présider sur la discussion, qui est bilingue, pour résumer un peu. Right? Et il faut faire confiance dans cette personne. Right? So I'm not going to say everything that Jen said. Je ne vais pas répéter tout ce que Jen avait dit. Mais si je résume, if I summarize, you got to put your faith in me que j'ai comme bien résumé quand même le noyau de la discussion, that I summarize at least the general gist, and then on procède à la prochaine question. We go to the next question.
And
so
I'd like to add, Robert, that actually
all day long.
A lot of our colleagues, so you and I have lived in this environment for as long as we've worked together. But a lot of our colleagues, this is new to them, to be in a meeting that flips back and forth. There's always questions that Marcella is answering, like, I don't understand. Why are they speaking French? Isn't the session English? What is it? And it's because I think not everyone has had exposure to bilingual meetings, because it's more of a bilingual meeting than it is a presentation that is offered in both official languages, if that makes sense. All of our sessions are typically very casual in format, so it is more like a meeting. So we do try to measure them that way.
Non, ben c'est ça. Puis the bar is higher. Nos attentes, nos espoirs sont un peu plus importants. Si c'est quelque chose de très formalisé, comme un apprentissage d'une formation formelle, mettons, de l'École de la fonction publique du Canada. Right? Mais c'est vraiment des discussions dans la série d'apprentissage virtuel. We're really, as you say, a little bit less formal here, you guys. I want to get to the long-term question, obviously, but there's a couple lovely questions here. One of them you can answer in the chat, I think, on average, how many participants attended the sessions. Lily, I'm going to give you a chance to unmic if you did want to address the OL question there. But I love this question that's come up here, Rebecca. What would be your one piece of advice, for someone else that's planning a virtual event or a virtual series? So, mettons que maintenant vous êtes des mentors, right? There's lots of advice you could give, I know, but what's like the real kicker, the thing that you really want to say, hey, you don't do this, or peut-être que c'est quelque chose que vous devriez faire. So you all want to jump at this, I can see.
Yeah.
So let's go to Josh, then we'll go to Jen, then we'll go to Marcella.
I'll just answer for everyone and say connect with Marcella, and she can.
No, she's not available. Do not connect with her.
You can share some best practices at least. But you know, definitely there are lots of elements to think through. But look at how events are being done well or not, and think through, you know, the potential pitfalls. So if you share a link on Twitter for a Zoom webinar or meeting, know that could get picked up by bots or trolls or whatever, and that's happened to us. In terms of, you know, if you're trying to run something on Microsoft Teams, just don't, unless it's a meeting of 10 people, because doing events with 100 or 200 people is an atrocious experience for both learners and organizers on MS Teams. No offense to Microsoft. But Marcella, over to you.
Yeah, I was going to say for myself, the one piece of advice in retrospect that we've learned very well is the plannings, the behind the scenes planning, right? Like make a checklist of the things that, you know, the things that you really need to consider nowadays are a gender balance panel, a diverse panel, and you also need to think about what kinds of questions. I mean, so it's not just one thing. That's what I'm going to tell the person who's asking this question. It's not just one thing. You need to consider several things, and you need to create that checklist. If I was starting from scratch, never having done an event before, I would watch a couple of events like Josh said, and then I would say, okay, what are the things that they did that I want to do, and how do I get there? So I think, and like Jen has written down, the dry runs is essential as well. You need to make sure that your panel, as well as the host, the moderator, is comfortable with the technology that you're using. You know, I'm gonna be extremely honest. We just learned about the Q&A during the last segment of Career Bootcamp. I don't know how long that Q&A function, that the thumbs up was available, but we just learned about it, and it's because I'm constantly just going into the Zoom platform, and I'm looking around. I'm just typing questions, and I Google everything. I'm addicted to asking Google for the solution. I'm no smarter than anyone else, but I have like chutzpah is what I would say. Like I just go for it. I look for the answer. And if I don't know that answer, I go to Jen. If Jen doesn't know, she's going to tell me somebody who might be able to help me. So in terms of the one thing, it's not just one thing. You got to look at several things for when you're doing an online event.
Mais si je peux me permettre, là, si je résume ce que Marcel a dit, c'est vraiment la curiosité qui est très importante et c'est le mode, je suis toujours en mode apprentissage, right? Never sit back, ne présume pas que toutes les modalités, que toutes les choses sont connues, mais on va continuer à apprendre, puis la façon dont on apprend, c'est en googlant la réponse à la question, c'est en réseautant avec les amis, puis les collègues, puis d'autres. Et c'est comme ça qu'on va toujours s'améliorer. So Jen, I want to twist this question one more time. How do you manage the workload, right? Because the thing is, you guys are producing here, and you can provide lots of tips, I'm sure, on how to plan, but how do you plan and still have a life?
I don't know why you asked me, because I don't. So anyone who knows me well, I don't always practice what I preach. So when I'm really, and like Marcel mentioned earlier, like when I'm really invested in a project, I'm all in. And Robert knows that as well as anyone, because I used to report to him and he saw my work hours. So I think it's hard because I think at the beginning, and that's what I would have said, maybe we shouldn't have done the way we did. At the beginning, we started off in a sprint, thinking that others would catch up and we could hand off the baton and some of the work would get easier. And we just kept sprinting and realizing that no one else was coming. So I think we slowed down to a marathon pace. And I think that that's part of what we're trying to do now. I try to reel Marcella back, because every once in a while she'll say, oh, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this. And I'll say, okay, well, something else has to go then, because we can't do everything. We can't partner with everyone. We can't offer a session on every subject. We only have so much capacity, again, because we don't have a budget. We don't have a structure. And so I don't really know, like to find our balance, we have to reel back, and we support each other in the way that we plan and design, and we work very independently, and then we come together, and then we work independently and we come together.
And I just want to add to that, yeah, we've gotten really much more organized as well. Like, so it allows us to kind of plan ahead a lot more. Like Jen said, when you're sprinting, you don't have time to look sideways, right? You're looking at the end goal, at that finish line, right? But for us now, like we have, like, it's a marathon for us, right? So we can plan more. And then, I know when Jen wants to take time off, they know when I want to take time off. So that's one of the things that in all these iterations, we've gotten just much more organized about it. And Jen's right, she does have to reel me back in, but that at the same time allows me to take time off when she does that.
Non, mais c'est une belle philosophie, right? So, si on est toujours dans un sprint, on ne voit pas d'autres choses, mais quand on est dans un marathon, éventuellement, on peut se permettre de prendre des pauses, même de quitter le champ de temps en temps, pour faire d'autres choses, puis de mieux planifier. Donc, l'organisation, ça vient avec un peu d'expérience, mais au début, là, c'était pas possible. Let's get to this final part of the discussion, because I'm looking at the clock and the question's been asked, and I would like to know myself, what's happening next? Like, where is this going? You've maybe created expectations for yourselves, right? Il se peut qu'il y ait des attentes au sein de la fonction publique que ça va continuer. Mais là, est-ce que ça va continuer? Si oui, dans quelle façon? Qu'est-ce que vous voyez, vous autres, pour l'avenir de la série? Josh?
Absolutely. So yes, it is here to stay. Is it here to stay forever? Not necessarily, but certainly for the next fiscal year, I think our general thought is that virtual programming is needed. And I think the work from home reality is here to stay. Maybe not 100% of the time, but I think we're going to see, 2 years or 5 years from now, we're going to talk about this shift of, oh, remember on like March 16th, 2020, when all of the workplaces that didn't allow remote work had to by public health order. So I think we know that the appetite is there for virtual learning. So we're going to continue that and supplement it with our other events. So you'll see on our wiki site that all the events for April are already programmed. We're currently programming the May, June, July, August events as well. We talk a lot about work-life balance. We ensure work-life balance among the team, but generally for our programming, it basically happens almost every week of the year. I think we took a 2-week break at around Christmas, otherwise it will be regular programming. So tune in to what interests you. Someday we will resume in-person learning events across Canada, but certainly probably not for the next 8 to 12 months.
Donc, en gros, ce que Josh dit, c'est que la série, oui, elle va continuer. Et il y a déjà pas mal de planification qui est en train pour des événements, même au printemps. Pour le long terme, on ne sait jamais. Il y a quand même on prévoit retourner aux événements d'apprentissage en personne éventuellement. Mais ça va être quand même d'ici quelques mois. There's a question I'm going to check in because I think it's brilliant. You did mention the funding, Jen, a couple of times. Y a-tu quelques occasions pour s'auto-financer? Like, can we go cap in hand? Can we beg for money? Like how long term, how are you going to make the long-term success real? Like where are you guys going? Where are you sitting? Who's funding you? Who's backing you? Like seriously, give us the skinny.
So I think right now that's at more to come on that in about 4 weeks time. But all this to say that overall, if you create a product and you create engagement and you're doing something that other people aren't, there is an appetite for that, and there is take up that happens in terms of senior management levels and their willingness to contribute to making sure that happens in the future. So hopefully we will have very good news to share around the end of April.
Bien joué. So I did ask the question, everybody. J'ai posé la question, mais lui, il n'a pas répondu. Ça va être d'ici quelques semaines qu'il y aurait des nouvelles. So well done. I'm going to give you all a last word. And don't forget, everybody, as Marcella has said, dans la clavardage, il y a une séance de réseautage sur Wonder. Allez vérifier vos invitations. You can go to Wonder and hook up for some networking after this. Last words, we'll start with Marcella, then we'll go to Josh, then we'll go to Jen. Marcella.
For all new employees, young employees, and people who've been with the government for a long time, don't be afraid to take a chance. I took a chance with FYN, and it was, I would say, a dream come true. So don't be afraid to take chances and take that leap of faith. 20 years into my career, that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, nice message, right? Because that can happen anytime in your career. I actually just learned something. I had no idea that Marcella had been around the public service for 20 years. J'avais cru, moi, là, qu'elle était comme toute nouvelle, honestly. So there you go. On apprend toujours quelque chose. Josh.
Yeah, I guess just to say that, we're working in an organization that has 283,000 positions. Maybe in these times we're up to 290 or 295. But you're in one of those positions. So if you're in an organization where you're feeling like every time I put up an idea, it's shut down, every time I try to advance something innovative or interesting, it's shut down, then look at one of those other 283,000 positions. Because this is a unique place that we work. And you need to find allies, and you need to find a place where you fit, but there is a place that you fit. And look for that. If you're not already in, Jen and I talk about if you're in your dream job. Jen and I are in our dream jobs. Hopefully Marcella is in her dream job right now. If you're not in your dream job and you're not finding ways that you can really have the impact you want to have, then look at those 283,000 other positions and find where you fit. Alors, trouvez les positions qui peut avancer vos priorités, mais dans lesquelles vous pouvez mettre votre marque, avoir le plus de valeur pour les fonctions publiques à long terme.
Et comme Josh dit, dans une organisation comme la fonction publique du Canada, là, il y a l'embarras du choix en ce qui a trait au poste. And even if you are in your dream job today, dreams evolve, and there might be another dream job down the line, right? So Jen McDougall knows that well too. So Jen, last word to you.
I love what both Marcella and Josh said. I think if the dream job doesn't exist, create it. We are in, and I hate this term, unprecedented times, but things have never been the way they are, and the conditions are ideal to try new things. So if you've got an amazing idea and you want to make it happen, now's the time to make it happen. Because in the next year, things are going to change again. We're back to hybrid. Who knows what can happen? But if you have a great idea, you can make it happen in the GC, just like we did. We were just two people having dinner in Toronto, wondering if we were ever going to see our families again, or if we were going to be living at the Sheraton. And this has evolved from that. So whatever your idea is, don't think it's too big. Don't think it's impossible. Don't think it won't work in the GC. Just think about what things are already in place that can support it happening, and then what you need as far as allies and supporters that can help you make it happen.
Et voilà, c'est un très bon point. On va terminer avec ça. C'est l'évolution du rêve, un peu le thème d'aujourd'hui, right? So from chaos grows great things. Et j'aimerais moi-même, de la part de tous les gens qui ont assisté aujourd'hui, and on behalf of everybody over the year who's taken in any of your events, any of them, there have been so many, I would like to just say thank you. J'aimerais vous remercier les trois. La fonction publique est meilleure parce que le réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux a développé la série d'apprentissage virtuel. We're better for it, honestly. The public service has had a great year. Despite the madness, we've had a great year in large part because of folks like you. So merci à vous trois. Merci. C'est un grand privilège de travailler avec vous. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.